What's up, guys? Today we're diving in the RC car. A new viewer actually, told me some things to look out for on the RC car, so we're gonna dive into the apparently sometimes the diff cases aren't greased, like the gears and stuff, so we're gonna pull it apart. It's my first time pulling it apart. We'll get to see how it kind of like pulls apart, I guess. Grease it if we have to. If not, then we'll go into a little bit more bashing. So let's dig in, I guess. We'll see. Okay. So I never really fully showed these before, but these are all the parts that came with it. Looks like a wheelie bar. At least I would assume that's what that would be. Looks like some servo linkages, control arm linkages, some shock stuff. I'm not sure what this is. Maybe it's it might be a plug for your for the battery, for the charger portion. So it's sealed. The Allen keys, and then a wrench. It looks like for like little nuts and bolts. For the wheels, I just noticed is they're Allen keyed in there. Very interesting design. I feel like if you tried to overpower it, it'd rip these little wheels out. So an upgrade would definitely be a little hub upgrade. It's still hard to see, but you'd upgrade the facings and stuff. But I guess it works for this amount of power. So let's take the wheels off. Alright, so it is hexed. There's a nice... It is plastic, but with the bolt going through it, it does seem to do decent. It holds it for the current power. It's a little odd looking at some of these hinge portions. Just seems like the angle doesn't seem right. It seems like it should be a little bit more that way, but I guess that's just a play in the suspension pieces, which I guess is fine. You need some play, so we'll keep digging in. I'll take the rest of the wheels off and then go from there. Alright, all 4 wheels are off. Now I guess we start with towers, shocks. We'll just take off the top parts because we just got to get the top caps off of these, so we'll just take as little as much off. So I believe we'll take the 4 bolt-less shocks, and then we might have to take these off as well. We might just be able to take the face plates off. I think we might just be able to take the face plates off. Probably not. We'll see. We'll get into it. I'll let you know. Alright, so I just got the 2 front shocks off. Fairly easy, just 2 through bolts into the strut tower, I guess you'd call it. And I take this piece off. It seems like there's one in the back, that one down there. And there's 2 little guys, if I can get to focus, there and there. And that should pull this piece off, which should give me access to bolts either underneath or... We'll see how it goes. We probably have to take the front cross members or cross arms off. So let's keep digging. Alrighty, so it was just those 3 pieces. Put the screws back in their spots so I know where they go, except for that one shock bolt. Keep that in mind. Now for the diff cover, it looks like... Sorry, a little close. Looks like we need to take this front protective plate off. And then it looks like we possibly need to take off we probably need to take these bolts out for the control arms, but there are 2 bushings, so keep that in mind. So yeah, guess I'm gonna start with this piece, pull all these bolts out, pop that off, expose the bolts underneath. These might be through bolts for the diff cover, we'll see. If they built it properly, that'd be awesome. If not, then, you know, just more bolts. So let's dig into it. Alright, so now that faceplate is off, it's now over here. Got all the bolts laid back in it. There's 2 long bolts, 6 smaller bolts. As you can see, they all kind of go in there. See all the linkages and stuff. It is a little weak, I'm not gonna lie. But that's all room for improvement. It was fairly cheap, so I can't really complain too much. I would have liked to see a little bit more metal in here, but hey, it is what it is. Plastic's cheap. So, servo looks good. That looks good. That looks good. There are 2 bolts, so we did have to take that off. There's 2 bolts hidden underneath for the diff case. There's 2 front bolts, and I believe that's all that's holding the diff case down. So I might just try to take those 4 off, pop it up, see if it needs to be greased. If it does, then we'll go ahead and pull these bolts out. I'll put those back in a little bit, pull these 2 strap tower or upper control arms off, and then pull the whole case off and grease it properly. Alright, so just as the viewer had suggested, thank you so much for letting me know, there is no grease. There's a little bit of grease, but it is dry in there, so keep that in mind, boys. Keep that in mind. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna think about it for a minute. I might pull these upper control arms off, take the whole cap off, that way I could really get into it. But I might just grab some grease and just start kind of pushing it in there, coating it, and I'll turn the drive shaft, coat the drive shaft, and then just pack some. We'll see. I'm gonna figure it out. I'll let you know what I do. Alright, so I decided to take the control arms off, put everything back, you know, how we need it. I did put 2 screws back in just to hold the case down, that way it didn't mess up any gears or anything like that. So we're gonna pull the 2 screws back out, pull this cap off without disrupting any gears. The axles fell out, which is fine. We could pop those back in, it's very easy. So we're gonna pop this open. I got some Valvoline car grease. It should work just fine, multi-purpose. Probably overkill, there's probably some specific stuff, but that's what I got, so that's what I'm using. So let's get into it. Okay, so to give it like some credit to the company, there is a little bit of grease, like a little bit. Not enough to my liking, so we're gonna grease her up. I'm gonna go ahead and grease it. I'll show you the outcome. Let me know if it was a mistake. Probably not, but hey, I feel like it needs it. Alrighty, it was a little hard to film, so I didn't do it, but I was sitting here spinning the drive shaft with my fingers. I was putting little blobs about right here, just and twisting it, letting it run to the gears, so it's all nice and in the gears. I put a little bit extra around it. I packed the cap, so there's extra once it gets warm. You know, it's gonna need a little bit more grease. It's probably overkill, but I'd rather just have a little bit more than a little less. So we're gonna run with this for now. Let me know if I need to do more, if this is overkill, if I need to do less. Yeah, I'm happy with this, so we're gonna go ahead and start bolting it back together. I'll show you once it's all done. Then we'll move on to the rear. Alrighty, with a little bit of struggle, I got it back together. Everything is all nice and tight again. One thing to keep in mind is there's a little like bowl lid inside of the top of these. This one, the pins or the screw stayed in, so it stayed all nice and straight, but this one fell out. I had to sit there and use the smallest Allen screw to try to, well, I did rotate it and then got the bolt through and then aligned it. So that's a little tricky. Other than that, everything went back together fairly simple. They built it fairly well. It's you know, decently self-explanatory. So now we're gonna go into the harder part, which is the rear, and we'll see what that entails. Alright, at first glance there's a lot more bolts. a lot more structure going on here in the rear, so keep that in mind. And then there's gonna be two different gear sets. There's this main drive gear that goes to the drive shaft, and then there's the differential gears. So you gotta worry about all these. All this has to come off. Basically, all this top part and these two. You gotta pull off this panel, this panel, this panel. So I do recommend getting a tray, and then you know, take photos as you go if you are forgetful. All right. So I'm gonna jump into this one. Probably a little bit less self-explanatory than the front, but you know, you kind of get the gist. Take the front bolts off, those bolts off, those bolts off, and then bing, 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 bing. Alright, so we got the faceplate cover off. This is all the wiring underneath. Fairly clean, fairly clean. Solders look nice. I can't really complain about this. This looks pretty good. So far, so good. Now I gotta pull off this piece, but I think I'm gonna pull this strut tower off first and then go to that. That way we could get all those bolts at once, pull both covers off, and this won't be in the way. One thing to note is that there's gonna be a lot more bolts. There's 4 here. 1, 2, 3, 4. And there's gonna be 4 on the other side as well. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so just keep that in mind. There's a lot going on. There's this bracket plate here, and then this side doesn't have one, but you know, just keep it in mind. All right, so that covers off. It's over there. All screws kind of placed where they are. There's no grease on the main motor linkage to the main drive. Don't know if there's supposed to be. I'm gonna put a little bit on. Way to take that off to get those bottom 2 bolts out of that case. So let's keep on going. Okay, so the way I decided to disassemble itself was 1 strut pin came out that side, 1 strut pin came out that side. So I'm just gonna leave them how they are. Once I'm done, I'm gonna just boop, boop, you know. So yeah, just so you know, those pins into here. Yes, that is true. I think. Well, I'll double check later. All that's left is these two screws, and then this cover should come off. So let's get to that. Okay, so the rear is way better greased than the front. Now it all globbed to the center, and there's not a lot on the teeth themselves, but there is a decent amount of grease. So I will say they do use grease, but I'm just gonna add a little bit more. You know, make sure it lasts, at least until this plastic gear, which this one is the only plastic gear I've seen so far, strips. The main drive of the motor is metal, diffs are metal, so I haven't pulled them apart. They are open diffs, so they aren't limited slip or anything like that. I'm gonna add some grease, go from there. Alright, so everything's greased. It took a lot of the drivetrain noise out, which is nice. I didn't put too much on there, just enough to kind of for some shock stuff and, you know. But diffs are greased, case is greased. Time to go back together. Alright, it's all back together. Everything is bolted back up, no bolts left over. We'll slap the wheels on and then go have some fun.